So now that we know how to integrate JavaScript as an external file, let's look at having some fun and actually adding some interactivity into our sites finally, using the power of JavaScript. So here I've basically created a basic web page where if you click on this button, you'll get an alert at the top saying working. So let's go through this together, and what I'll say here at the start of the lecture is we're going to be using something called functions. So this word here, function, is going to be very, very important going on through any of your coding from now on, whether you're using JavaScript or Java or Python, any coding language. Functions are very, very important. So just keep that word in your mind. Now, a lot of people have different ways of teaching JavaScript. The way that I think is the most effective is to get stuck straight into doing it the correct way and doing functions. So that's the way we're going to do it. But what it requires is for you to take an active role in this and make sure that you're coding along either at the same time, or you do this exercise immediately after you've listened to this lecture. I can't emphasize just how important that is. So let's get started, and hopefully you'll be able to pick this up quite quickly. So what we have here, we have a basic header and a button. I'm going to delete everything to begin with so that we're starting from scratch again. So I'm just going to save this. So now we have no HTML, and I'm also going to remove all of this. So all we have now are two blank, let's just delete everything, why not? We have two blank files, one blank HTML file and one blank JavaScript file. That's it, nothing else. They're both in the same folder. So we'll get our HTML started the same way as always. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to link my JavaScript file in at the bottom of the body, which we went over last time. But basically the reason why we load it in at the bottom of the body is because it's the last thing that will be loaded, so that our HTML can first be loaded and then JavaScript will be loaded afterwards. So I'm just going to put this onto one line so it looks a bit nicer, a bit more readable, and then src for source equals, and then the name of my JavaScript, which is onclick.js. Okay, and this is case sensitive, so I do have to make sure I have the capital C here. Okay, and you can obviously call your files whatever you like. This is just what I've decided to call mine. Next, I'm just going to add a heading as normal, so on click magic. Then afterwards, I'm going to add a button. And I want the button to say, click me. So when I refresh, brilliant. When I click this button, nothing's happening. That's because we haven't yet added any instructions for JavaScript. So what I'm going to be doing now is creating the function. So what a function is, you can basically think of it as a list of instructions. So if, for example, someone were to tell you how to, I don't know, make pasta with a sauce, there'd be a list of instructions, right? It might be, okay, open the pasta, boil the water, add the pasta into the water, chop up your vegetables, and it can be as specific as you like, but what I'm trying to get across is that it's a list of instructions. So it's a nice lot of instructions. So for this lecture, we're just going to be putting one instruction in our function, but a function can hold as many instructions as you like. All we're going to be doing is adding one instruction, and that's to say, basically have that alert appear, which was appearing before. So I'm going to go into my JavaScript file, and the first thing I need to do is write the word function. So you can see it turned a purple color, which is good. The reason why you write function first is to basically tell your JavaScript, I'm creating a function. Now we can call this function whatever we like. So we could literally call it like ham sandwich if we wanted to. But the thing is, that doesn't really make sense. We want to make it at least something that makes sense. So if we had like, I don't know, 20 functions, we wouldn't be like, oh, what does ham sandwich now do again? We'd want it to be like button alert, because then when we look at that we think, oh yeah, I remember now, it's the one where we click a button and an alert appears. So it's best to call your function something that makes sense. Then afterwards we're going to add these empty brackets, which we'll come to later, and then we're going to add some curly braces. So basically the curly braces are saying within these curly braces, these are all the instructions that I have. So for example, if we wanted to alert on something, like we wanted that pop-up box to appear, JavaScript has made that super easy for us to do. All we have to do is write alert, then in brackets put in whatever text we want to appear. This is working. Fantastic. So just to go over what we've done here, we've created a function. So the first thing in JavaScript, if you want to create a function, you have to write the word function to tell JavaScript, I'm creating a function. The next thing you do is you give your function a name. You can call this whatever you want. Just make sure to include these empty brackets afterwards. Then within these curly brackets, that's sort of the contents of the instructions. We added just one instruction, and that was to alert, which is just a useful JavaScript tool. They've already built this for us. So we want to alert and this text that's inside. And then after this, we just add a semicolon, just kind of like we were doing in CSS. So if I were to try and run this now, it wouldn't work because we haven't connected this function to the button. So let's go back to our HTML. We've created a button, but we haven't actually said when it's clicked, it needs to do that function. So what we use is something called Onclick. Onclick equals, and then we just put in the name of our function, which was button alert. Fantastic. And empty brackets. So now if we run this, yay, we can see that this is now working. So let's review what we've just done. Essentially, first thing we did was we connected our JavaScript. The next thing we did, we created our own function. So we wrote the word function, we gave our function a name, whatever we wanted, added the brackets, and then the curly braces we added the instructions. And just to illustrate that you can have as many instructions as you want, let's add another alert. This is a second instruction. Then a semicolon afterwards. Number 3. So now we have 3 instructions in our function. Once we created our function, we linked it into the button by just inside the button tag putting Onclick equals, then the name of the function with the empty brackets. So now if we do this again, we should see an alert. Then when we click OK, we get the next one appear, and then the third one appear. Fantastic. So as you can see with JavaScript, it's gonna, hopefully you can already get a feel that this is going to be a really, really useful tool to have when creating websites. But the thing is, in order to get there, you do have to remember these syntax because it's so important. So what I highly recommend you do is to go ahead and create some of your own functions and try and use it like we have now. So create a button, just a normal HTML button. Then in your JavaScript file, you write the word function, then the name of your function, then you have to use empty brackets, then in these curly braces, you add your instructions. For now, just have them as alerts with text. At the end of each line, add a semicolon. And so once you've done this like 5 or 10 times, you can really get into a rhythm and start writing them over and over. It's really powerful. So you just need to learn the initial syntax on how to do this stuff, and then add it into your button using the Onclick. And then once you can do that, you're doing really well, and you can do a lot of stuff very easily. So at this point, at this initial milestone, it's really important just to make sure that you're comfortable creating your own functions. So once you're feeling at that level, or you're feeling relatively confident, then move on to the next lecture, and I'll see you there.